The Wildlife Protection Act 1972 is one of the most important environmental laws in India. Before this act, many wild animals and birds were rapidly disappearing because of hunting, illegal trade, and destruction of forests. Therefore, Parliament enacted this law to protect wildlife, conserve biodiversity, and maintain ecological balance. The Act also provides for the establishment of the National Board for Wildlife, NBWL, to advise the government on wildlife conservation. Salient features of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. 1. Protection of wild animals, birds and plants. The main objective of the Act is to protect wild animals, birds, and plants and to conserve their natural habitats. 2. Prohibition of hunting. The Act generally prohibits the hunting, capturing, poisoning, or killing of protected wild animals except in limited situations permitted by law, such as self-defense or when an animal becomes dangerous or incurably diseased. 3. Establishment of protected areas. The Act provides for the declaration of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, conservation reserves, and community reserves for the protection of wildlife and forests. 4. Protection of endangered species. Rare and endangered species receive special legal protection so that they do not become extinct. 5. Regulation of trade in wildlife. The Act prohibits or strictly regulates the trade, sale, purchase, transport, and possession of wild animals, animal parts, trophies, and articles made from them. 6. Schedules for different species. The Act classifies animals and plants into different schedules according to the level of protection required. Species needing the highest protection receive the strictest legal safeguards. 7. Appointment of wildlife authorities. The Act provides for the appointment of wildlife officers and the establishment of authorities to implement the law effectively. 8. Penalties for offences. Persons involved in illegal hunting, wildlife trade, or destruction of protected habitats can face imprisonment, fines, or both. Constitution of the National Board for Wildlife, NBWL. The National Board for Wildlife is constituted by the central government under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Its important members include the Prime Minister of India as the chairperson, the Minister in charge of Environment, Forest and Climate Change as the vice-chairperson, members of Parliament, senior government officials, experts in wildlife conservation, ecology, forestry, and environmental science, representatives of non-governmental organizations, NGOs, working in wildlife conservation, other members nominated by the central government. The board brings together experts and policymakers to guide wildlife conservation in the country. Functions of the National Board for Wildlife. The major functions of the National Board for Wildlife are to advise the central government on policies relating to wildlife conservation, to promote the protection of wildlife and biodiversity, to recommend the establishment and proper management of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, conservation reserves, and community reserves, to review wildlife conservation programs and suggest improvements, to advise on measures for protecting endangered species, to consider proposals involving diversion of land from protected areas and recommend whether they should be approved, to promote research, education, public awareness, and training in wildlife conservation, to encourage cooperation between the central government, state governments, scientific institutions, and voluntary organizations. Case Study Center for Environmental Law, WWF India v. Union of India, Protection of Asiatic Lions. In this important case, The Supreme Court dealt with the conservation of the Asiatic lion, which was found mainly in the Gir forest of Gujarat. Scientists recommended that some lions should be shifted to another suitable forest so that the entire population would not be endangered by a disease, natural disaster, or any other unexpected event. The Supreme Court directed that wildlife conservation should be based on scientific principles and the long-term survival of the species rather than on political considerations. The case highlighted the importance of expert advice and the role of authorities like the National Board for Wildlife in protecting endangered animals. Simple lesson from the case: wild animals are the national wealth of the country. They must be protected through scientific planning, proper laws, and cooperation between governments and experts. Conclusion: the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 is a landmark law for conserving India's wildlife. It protects animals, birds, plants, and their habitats, prohibits illegal hunting and trade, and establishes protected areas. The National Board for Wildlife plays an important role by advising the government, reviewing conservation programs, and promoting wildlife protection. Together, the Act and the Board help preserve India's rich biodiversity for present and future generations.